Hello, beloved Earth family. Welcome to Devon's English Connection. I am Devon, and I hail from Venice, Florida, in the United States. In my very first YouTube video, I am reaching out to the worldwide community, particularly to those for whom English is not the primary language spoken at home. In fact, this is my love letter to the international friends I have come to know over the years. This channel is dedicated to my friend Brian Ellis, who unwittingly participated in placing me on the path that has led me here. Brian, I wish you were here. I so wanted to share my fulfilled dream with you. For this series, I will be uploading 4 separate videos with no more than a week between each. Part 1, today's video, provides personal background information, including a memory of teaching and learning from one of my favorite English as a Second Language, or ESL, students. In some spaces, the abbreviation ENL is now used, which stands for English as a New Language. Today's talk also focuses on the importance of English as a linking language, offering real-world examples. Lastly, I will introduce one of the 2 topics I plan to discuss: social work. Part 2 delves into 10 types of social work, while parts 3 and 4 will emphasize leadership. Social work is an atypical subject of discussion in American schools, but I am convinced of the vital importance of building skills that can be utilized to serve each other's grandmothers and grandfathers, mothers and fathers, aunties and uncles, sisters and brothers, daughters and sons. Tapping into the power of love to fortify our connections will lead to fewer folks falling through the cracks, thus ensuring the health and well-being of our world family. It is essential, in my view, that we weave the unique fibers of our individual lives together to strengthen the fabric of our communities. Through caring for each other, we can create a vivid tapestry, eclectic and lively, a world of understanding and belonging. This societal action is the very key to security for us all. Notice that my speech is slow. Purposefully, my pronunciation is also exaggerated. This video, and additionally any subsequent videos I may produce, is created for the purpose of bringing people together to discuss select topics of interest. Therefore, it is necessary that ESL or ENL learners be able to follow along and comprehend what is being said, or at the very least, have ample time to take notes for future learning opportunities. I have often heard that the best way to learn or perfect a foreign language would be organically. That if a foreigner were dropped in a country where she could not speak the language and was forced to fend for herself, the learning process would become turbocharged. The ability to communicate her needs for survival would automatically become top of mind, distractions banished, and laser focus adopted. I have seen evidence through my everyday voice clip communications that there is some truth in this idea. So this series, while not a back and forth conversation, resembles an organic learning platform more than a traditional classroom lesson. I first became interested in the process of learning English as a second language a little over 8 years ago when I was guided to assist ESL in a Facebook group started by two young Nepali citizens, Maya and Jeet. My 2 year stint as one of perhaps 7 admins in that group transformed my worldview. The importance of English as a linking language rises to the top of the revelations bestowed upon me during my time in English Learning Club. Students and teachers alike came to this group already possessing anywhere from a rudimentary to an exceptional understanding of English. Whatever their level, the idea was always to learn something new and to improve. I'd often hear, I want to sound like a native speaker, but the most cited reason for the need to learn English was economic. We are all now part of a global economy, and English has become the linking language for doing business. There is a plethora of reasons. At the top would be 1. England's history of colonization, 2. Today's technological advances, 3. Close geographical proximity to English speaking countries, and 4. America's economic and political power. There is no doubt that if one wishes to make oneself more valuable on the job market, learning how to speak English is a way to accomplish that goal. Using English for intercultural communication enables folks from different countries who speak different languages to use the shared language to understand one another. Therefore, knowing how to speak English is indeed quite valuable. Knowledge is power. For example, if a young man from a farming community in Nepal must work in the United Arab Emirates so that he can support his family back home, he can potentially earn a better wage if he is able to communicate well in English. Dubai is one city that relies heavily on tourism, and Americans and Brits are there in great numbers. English-speaking workers are in high demand to facilitate the needs of said tourists. Likewise, a textile manufacturer in India who speaks Hindi can communicate directly with her lucrative client, the owner of a silk dress shop in Italy, if both business women rely upon their shared knowledge of the English language as a link. Apart from, but just as important as economic reasons for communication, is the simple human desire to connect. Social media has linked people in an unprecedented way. Never before has it been so easy and natural to befriend people who live in countries outside of our own. This is good for us. Getting to know each other in a familiar way is often an eye-opening experience. When we spend time with unfamiliar people from unfamiliar cultures, previously held beliefs about them which were never based upon our own exposure can melt away. What we are left with in place of our former ignorance is a clearer view of the world in which we live. It was in English Learning Club on Facebook that I first met Shanavaz. He was in his early 20s, a Muslim man from Kurjing, India, in the Darjeeling district of West Bengal. Shanavaz immediately stood out to me because he seemed angry so much of the time, and I was afraid of that anger. I had not really known many Muslim people in my life, and his profile picture showed a strong bearded man dressed in traditional clothing. Being American, I had only ever seen images like this on the news and in a few movies. These men were always members of ISIS, the Taliban, or Al Qaeda, and so my mind generated an image of Shanavaz brandishing a machine gun, though I never dared to admit it. The perception was automatic and without my consent, based upon my conditioning at the time. Though it made me feel like a creep, I still had to struggle to tamp down my fear. Shanavaz's palpable rage, which did not help to allay my fears, was focused on that very perception. He despised being seen as a terrorist because it was so unfair. He had never terrorized anyone. But his hatred of the way he knew that much of the world saw him initially lunged through the phone at me, landing in my psyche as pure malevolence, as though that hatred was his very essence. The written word can be so easily misinterpreted, and English was not Shanavaz's first language. So his ability to express himself fully was limited, while my lack of understanding about his culture and religion and my preconceived notions about men who look like him nearly blinded me with fear. He was scary, I won't lie. But I also intuitively understood that hurt can make us that way. And I was curious. I knew that fear of the unknown often leads to a hatred of the unknown, and that facing my fear and getting to know Shanavaz might provide an antidote for us both. So I leaned in and listened and listened and listened some more. It took a lot of effort for Shanavaz to erase my anxiety, but he eventually did by consistently showing up as the gentle, wounded, non-judgmental, and kind young man whom he truly was. He felt everything so deeply. That I understood. Shanavaz's handwriting was the most elegant I had ever seen. Once we became friends, he would write stories for me to edit. They were mostly children's short stories. He loved children, animals, and all the natural world. He was childlike himself in many ways and so imaginative. One of his tales was an account of a trip to an open market to buy some chocolate with a young boy relative. Shanavaz wrote of the playful teasing of the boy so vividly that I could easily imagine being there, watching their cheerful interaction. That story made me laugh a lot. Most of his children's tales heavily featured nature, ants, trees, and birds, and concluded with a moral. But I remember that he also wrote a love tragedy that was undoubtedly autobiographical, though cloaked in fantasy. Shanavaz died before his 30th birthday. I miss him all the time. I will forever be grateful that he chose to share his brief life with me. To this day, Shanavaz is one of the best confidants I've ever had. If I had allowed my initial fear of him to take hold instead of loving him well, I would have missed out on a valuable lesson about trust and blessed friendship. Some of the most enduring and cherished connections I have ever made have started out raw, just like this, based upon nothing more than shared humanity, using the English language as a tool to get to the heart of the person. When we humans assume that because we share a mother tongue, cultural or religious background, or because we live within the same borders, that our values are or should be in lockstep with our neighbors, we are limiting ourselves. We are voluntarily restricting ourselves from the bounty that our amazing planet has to offer. While our world leaders often pump us full of nationalist pride or tout isolationism as a means of protection from the scary people outside of our borders, I believe it is infinitely important for us as human beings to create strong bonds with people of good moral character who love us well, no matter where they hail from, or what God they worship, or whether they worship a God at all. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter made this point crystal clear when he said, "The bond of our common humanity is stronger than the divisiveness of our fears and prejudices." What a precious gift English as a linking language is. And it is sprinkled with countless gems in the forms of an eclectic vocabulary, slang, and colloquialisms such as idioms. I have included as many of these jewels as I could comfortably manage in our conversation. This treasure is for you, the extra curious, who want to sound like native speakers. Before I introduce the subject of social work, I wish to thank my friend A.S. You have helped me so much over the years. You are the inspiration for these videos and the idea person behind the social work topic. I appreciate you more than I can possibly express. Today's video, as well as the next 3, is directed at advanced ESL or ENL learners and anyone else who may be interested to share information and insights about the benefits of engaging in social work. Not only does participation teach you about the needs of your community, people, animals, and the environment in which we live, but it gives you the opportunity to develop leadership skills. Through assessing and addressing the needs of those around you, you will certainly discover that most needs, such as basic security, are the same as your own. But you will also learn that many folks' requirements are different from yours. To begin your education, I encourage you to venture out there into your community and gain some practical knowledge about the world that you and your neighbors live in. If you have a taste for adventure and have the means to travel, explore the world beyond. We can learn from anyone, anywhere, and make an impact wherever we land. In fact, it is quite impossible not to affect those we meet. Likewise, we are affected by them. We human beings were all made differently to learn from one another. Figuring out how to make these encounters positive ones is vital work for healing our hearts, our minds, our relationships, and our planet. "No man is an island" is an idiom often used to point out our need for other humans. Made famous by John Donne, a great English poet, this figure of speech was, ironically, not lifted from one of his poems. John Donne's most famous quote was first heard in a sermon he gave while he was Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. Here is a piece of the famous clergyman's sermon from 400 years ago. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as any manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. No man is an island means that people are inextricably connected. There is no such thing as pure self-sufficiency, as we all rely upon each other to survive and to prosper. Therefore, the self-made man is a myth. Because of our interconnectedness and reliance upon one another, it makes perfect sense to ensure our own existence by fortifying our communities. One way to do that is through participation in social work. If each of us offered up just a small piece of ourselves as a tithe to our communities, the deficits within them would vanish. There would be no shortage of ability, talent, knowledge, or compassion, and we would have the necessary oversight to secure our interests, safety, and future. I hope to see you all for the next video, which will highlight 10 types of social work we can engage in to uplift our communities. Please do remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share this message. Namaste.